Hello, everyone. My name is David Siembe. I'm the head of the Policy and Analysis Division at APO. Today, I invited Simon Cicero. He's the founder of the Boundaryless. Hello, Cicero. How are you doing?
Hello, nice to be with you today. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what your company does?
Independent professional that a few years ago created a framework called the Platform Design Toolkit. I used to work with companies doing strategy and products innovation, and a few years ago, I kind of felt like we needed a new methodology, a new approach to design these kind of ecosystemic initiatives and products. And so I created this framework. And from 2013, this framework is an open framework. It's a Creative Commons based one. So there has been so much interest and many companies and organizations that have been interested in working on that. And within time, basically, we had to create this company. So this company was kind of created because there was so much demand for companies to have support or engage with each other into this platform thinking. And so Boundaryless is the company that basically develops and integrates tools and languages to help organizations mobilize and work with their ecosystems. So that's more or less what Boundaryless does.
So we are switching from the era of a push to an era of a pull. So what's the main difference between these two concepts?
I think these pretty much, I would say, defines what Platform Design Toolkit is all about. It's really about acknowledging that there is so much power now at the edge of the system. So the pervasive technologies that we have are really making individuals and small organizations, micro enterprises, let's say, very powerful, very capable. And so any organization that wants to thrive now needs to move away from the idea of pushing its products to the market, but much more about pulling participants into a system, a shared system, where producers and consumers can meet each other. And also, for example, generate these very niche and specific special experiences that a traditional organization may not be really capable of producing, because if it's a much more bureaucratic, system that cannot really adapt to the need of a specific customer. So the idea is really pool. The age of pool is, it's essentially for companies to acknowledge and understand that it's no more about producing a product and pushing it to the market, but much more about attracting in one place and creating these channels for producers and consumers to interact with each other.
We are hearing a lot about platform business nowadays. So could you give us your own definition of platforms and then also their significance?
What is a platform? Actually, I'm not a big fan of talking about one platform, but it's much more about, I think, what I call platform age. So essentially, what to do we have now, as I said before, is not just the pervasivity of technology that makes the small very much more capable, much more powerful, but it's also a matter of technologies that reduces cost of transacting with each other. So it's much easier now with the internet to coordinate large scale systems through software, for example. And so this platform age, it's really about learning how to mobilize and how to resonate with systems. And a platform essentially is two main things. A platform strategy, I would say, is essentially what we call two main engines. One engine is called the transaction engine. So it's about how do you create the channels for entities to interact with each other and exchange value. So it's like, if you think about a city, how do you make the roads? And on the other side, it's about what we call the learning engine. So it's really about how do you create a system of services that support all the people all the entities in this ecosystem to learn faster inside the ecosystem instead of being outside. So So you kind of created this promise of scalable learning, as John Hagel calls it. So you need to create this space where it's easy to exchange value. So you have this transaction engine, this marketplace. And on the other side, it's a place where you, as a platform shaper, let's say, you offer this kind of evolutionary learning system and services so that everybody in the system can learn faster and become a better version of themselves, basically, and thrive in an otherwise very much more challenging market, because we are living a market on continuous disruption, continuous change. So you really need to learn, adapt, and find new opportunities and develop new capabilities in the market. That's what a platform should do: facilitate transactions and sustain continuous and scalable learning.
So can you just give us a little bit specific cases? Let's say that Airbnb, for example, or Uber, and also nowadays actually in Asia we have Gojek or Grab. So
Right.
all those things. Amazon is also kind of platform business, right? So these are kind of buzzwords, and everybody knows their business. But why do you have to care about their business? It's because it's going to last long time, or because it has a social significance.
I think Airbnb it can be a very easy example, and it's really easy for people to understand, for example, how Airbnb has implemented these two engines that I mentioned. So this idea of transactions, a marketplace where you can rent and find your holiday house. But on the other side, it's also about people starting by doing traveling and then maybe becoming host, and at some point becoming professional host. So becoming better and better at what they do. So this is the idea of the learning opportunities that Airbnb is offering to people. This opportunity to, becoming better and better at what they do, finding new opportunities, and for example, becoming, at some point, professional hosts that can manage others' houses. So it's really about professionalization. So that's a good example. But you spoke about Asia, and I think it's good to speak about how this pattern is playing out in another Asian protagonist that, for example, is Haier Group. That is a company that we have been working with quite a lot lately. So in Haier Group, it's a big conglomerate, more than thousands of people, 80,000 if I'm not wrong, and it's made up of these 4,000 micro enterprises. So it's not just a monolithic company, but it's a company that has been fragmenting itself into a network of 4,000 micro enterprises. And this company has created very interesting ways for these micro enterprises to connect with each other and also with companies outside of the group. So, for example, by standardizing some contracting system, reducing the cost of transaction, creating these channels for these organizations to cooperate. And so it's somehow a company that is mimicking the idea of a platform, not in terms of business model, or not just in terms of business model, but also in terms of organizational model. And essentially why platforms are essential at today. Because as the world, essentially as technology reduces the transaction cost everywhere, Rita McGrath a few weeks ago said something very clear and said, as transaction cost goes down, in places where we are used to see a company, now increasingly we're going to see a marketplace. And essentially, if you look into the trends, you will see that marketplaces are penetrating everywhere. And at the moment in Europe, more or less, we have 15% of the market, that's the consumer market, that is organized through platforms and marketplaces. In Asia, it's more, it's 25%. So more or less, you can think about an average of 20% of the market that is nowadays organized through marketplaces and platforms. What we see now, it's a potential continuous penetration of this model everywhere. So in any market. So for example, now increasingly, we are seeing marketplaces in business to business. So for example, there is this company called Crexi that is about commercial real estate. So it's a marketplace where you can sell and buy commercial real estate. Or we are seeing Freightos that is a marketplace that deals with shipping containers, or we are seeing, I don't know, Wonder School, which is a marketplace where you can actually create a K-12 or homeschooling or schooling projects. So you can actually start a school, like a child's school in your house or in a space, just by using this platform. So this is another example. Another reflection could be, think about food. For example, we think about food and we know that we can order food online. It's a marketplace. But what about growing food? And what about distributing food? What about harvesting food? And all these things are not yet organized in marketplaces and platforms. And this is going to happen. So the big question for companies and organizations is, how do you fit with this transition? So how does your organization transform to be able to address these opportunities on the market? And this is the answer that, for example, companies like Hire, but also companies like Zappos in the US are trying to answer. So it's about fragmenting your organization in small entrepreneurial units that can go and take these opportunities on the market, organize these new contextual marketplaces, more vertical, more managed, more professional, so technically requiring a broader capability from organizations to be able to push their entrepreneurial leaders into the market, let them organize the market, and reap the benefits. So companies are transforming into this network of entrepreneurs so that they can go and organize pieces and parts of the market that are just waiting to be transformed into marketplaces and platforms.
So platform design is about identifying and linking elements. So how can you make good use of platform design in our daily life?
More or less, the platform design toolkit that we created, for example, and the opportunity exploration guides that we have made available on our website, that is, by the way, www.platformdesigntoolkit.com, are essentially tools for entrepreneurs. So making good use of platform design, it's really about identifying markets, identifying ecosystems, and designing a business that resonates with that. I always make this example of the amplification of the music. So you cannot amplify a music that doesn't exist. So it's really about understanding the music first, so capturing this music that is coming from the system, and then designing a business as an amplifier. So this is about listening the ecosystem, looking at the potential that producers, for example, have in the ecosystem, and connecting that with the expectations of the consumers. So this is a good way to use platform design. It's about listening, and it's about modeling, and it's about resonating. It's about creating experiences that connect instead of just products that you can consume. But you can use platform design, I would say, more in general, as a design practice, or as a pair of glasses that you wear. And when you go out and engage with business and organizations and the world, you could even design yourself as a platform. And this would mean that you would design ways for you to help nodes in your context, in your network, to connect with each other and create opportunities, but also services that you provide to all the people that ends up in your influence sphere, let's say, and so that you can let them learn and let them become the better version of themselves. So if you become something like that, you become a platform on your own. And so platform thinking is much more about, platforms are much more about platform thinking and platform practicing than only platform design. It's really about embodying this idea of platform, because these technologies are everywhere. The reduction of transaction costs is everywhere. So you live into this age of platforms, and you need to resonate with that.
Many viewers are not very familiar with the platform design toolkit that you created. So it's almost sounds like a business model canvas by Alexander Osterwalder. So can you be a little bit more specific about what you mean by platform design toolkit?
So this is an example, but essentially, what is platform design toolkit exactly? The platform design toolkit is a methodology. It's a toolkit, so it's a set of set of design canvases that you can, for example, print in large prints and in the pre-COVID world, we were used to do a lot of live workshops. Now we just use online boards. So, for example, if you go to our website, you can instantiate a board on Miro, Miro.com, where you can work on these canvases with your groups. And it's a co-design practice. So it's about doing strategy together, visualizing the strategy and defining your objectives, the things you want to prototype, and so on. It covers roughly 4 stages. So the exploration phase, the design phase, the validation, and the growth hacking. And mainly, I would say that we are famous for the initial design tools that were released in 2013 for the first time, but now the last version, I think, online is actually 2.2, not just 2.1. Sorry for that, but essentially it's a set of these 6 key canvases that you can use to design, to map your ecosystem, to portray the entities in your ecosystem, to analyze what is the potential to exchange between each other, and then to design these 2 engines that I mentioned, the transaction engine and the learning engine, so that you can put everything together into what we call a clear platform experience. So something that you can define a business model, you can define the journey of interaction between the entities, something you can prototype. So normally, before that, you also do some exploration. So there is another set of tools that we are now also updating that is called the Platform Opportunity Exploration Guide. So it's a guide that helps people to map what's happening in the ecosystem. So the music, you remember I spoke about the music first. So it's about capturing the music and understanding how, by applying 6 essential platform plays, let's say strategic plays, you can imagine how do you transform the value chain and how does your new platform proposition generate a different amount of value, different type of value. So it's a value chain analysis tool that prepares your strategic understanding so that you can move into the design phase. So it's something that normally happens before actually doing the design. Then we have other tools, so tools that can help you essentially study, for example, network effects. So, for example, understanding the nature of your network. If your network is a network based on geographic clusters, or maybe it's asymmetric in terms of one producer serving many consumers, and then you can think about how does how basically the properties of the network end up in generating network effects. And network effects are about ways that in a system that you bring to the market, ways that you have to generate more value for each user that joins the system. So normally network effects are very powerful ways for platforms to become very hard to displace and generate these advantages versus other solutions. Because if the value grows with the number of users, normally you tend to attract more users and your cost of acquisition goes down with size, so you become very competitive with the others. And then you also have some lean validation tools that you can use. So for example, here you can see there is a script, a template for scripting interviews for validation. So to some extent, this is also powering a community of people. As you can see, these are some, I would say, some screenshots from some of our webinars and some of our community webinars and community conversations. There are some pictures here on the top about our bootcamp. So we also provide, our methodology is open source, it's in Creative Commons, but we also provide regularly bootcamps and masterclasses so people can learn from us. So, for example, there is one bootcamp coming up on September, around September 20. I don't remember the exact dates. I think it's 21 for 4 afternoons. We're going to certify a new batch of platform designers. So the bootcamp that you can see pictures here on the slide, it's an experience where people can meet each other, can meet another fellow platform designer, and they can learn the whole practice that we have been developing that covers exploration, design, growth, and validation, basically. And we're also working on new guides. Everything that we do will be open source. As always, we always try to really deliver everything in the commons. So this is more or less what Platform Design Toolkit is, and the fact that it's open source made that very much a pillar of this practice. So in 2016, essentially, when we came up with the Platform Design Toolkit 2.0, our first white paper, we set the stage for this practice of design to be standardized, to grow, and now we have more than 60,000 actually open source toolkit adopters. We've been working with so many people all over the world. At the end of the day, I think we have now approaching something like 800 people that we have been teaching training during our public master classes and boot camps. So that's more or less what platform design is in a few words. It's a methodology. It's a methodology that covers several stages of producing a platform strategy. It's also a community, and it's a movement, I would say. It's an open source movement that we as a company, we are trying to sustain with trainings, with examples, with content, with guides. Everything is accessible. Everything is open source. So we really try to make it easy for people to engage with that.
So are there any differences in how platforms should be designed for SMEs or big companies to enhance productivity? Can you give us any specific examples?
Right. Well, in general, I would say SMEs are essential, are critical. Why? Because we are entering an age of micro-entrepreneurship. So if you accept the idea that technology makes the small much more powerful, it means that you as a small enterprise, a small medium enterprise, you can achieve a lot on the market. You can create these scalable strategies, you can bring these platform ideas on the market, and suddenly you can orchestrate, you can generate interactions and value in a much broader system. So think about Boundaryless, for example. Boundaryless itself is a small company, but through its own platform strategy, it's essentially based on public trainings and an open source methodology and many other things. We have been able to empower several tens of thousands of people all over the world doing their own platform strategies. So as a small unit, as a small company, we have been able to influence widely, I would say, a very important modern design practice. And similarly, small, medium enterprises all over the world now can do that. It's much more about, it's now increasingly, it's not about your capital. It's about your capability to design resonant strategies. So it's really about the brain energy that you can put into something and how much you can resonate with that, how much you can design something that fits with the ecosystem. Of course, you need the investments because bringing a platform strategy on the market also needs to have a growth moment, a launching moment, solving a chicken egg problem, for example. So at the start, when you create a strategy, you don't have your platform strategy, maybe you don't have demand or you don't have supply yet. So you need to focus, for example, on one side of your marketplace, and you may have to subsidize it. You may have to spend money into getting this into the market. So this is for sure some level of investment that you need. But as we move into more niche, more vertical, more managed context, this context may be more accessible for a small company. And indeed, what is happening at the level of a big company, it's much more about how do you transform your big company, a bureaucracy, into a network of loosely coupled but coherent micro-enterprises, micro-companies. So in terms of productivity, in terms of how do you transform an organization, a large organization specifically, fragmenting this organization into small units that are much more entrepreneurial and much more market-oriented. And so they can get into the market, listen to a particular ecosystem, understand what this ecosystem is trying to achieve, and create this platform strategy to connect and empower and enable and grow this ecosystem. So the question is, the key difference between a small company and a big company is that the big one needs to become a set of small ones, otherwise it will be too bureaucratic to be able to engage and interact with the age of networks. There is this essential, very interesting law that came up at the end of the 60s that is called the Conway Law. Mel Conway, the author of this law, basically said and explained that any organization that creates a system, a strategy, it will replicate its communication structure on the market. So if you have a monolithic, functional, I would say top-down organization, there is no way you're going to be able to end up on the market with a networked product, with a networked strategy, with a platform strategy. You also need to change the way your organization works internally to be able to resonate with the potential of the ecosystem externally.
You mentioned briefly about the consumer electronics conglomerate Haier. So how's your platform design toolkit relevant to its operations?
The micro enterprises that are part of this large company are bringing value propositions on the market that often are marketplaces. These micro enterprises could use the platform design toolkit to bring their own products to the market. I've been working with this company since a while. Technically, they never used, I think, a platform design toolkit as a micro enterprise because it's not even available in Chinese. So, but the question is that they're actually doing something that is very resonant with the platform design toolkit. So companies, for example, from Europe or from Asia or from somewhere else could mimic both the organizational structure of Haier, but also the approach to the market. And for the approach to the market, they could use the platform design toolkit. While in terms of how do you mimic the organizational structure of Haier, you could even use another toolkit that we are developing. So if you go on our website and you go on thinking, you will be able to click on another toolkit that we are now basically prototyping, following more than 1 year of work with our Haier colleagues, and that is called the EEEO toolkit. That stands for Entrepreneurial Ecosystem Enabling Organization Toolkit. So it's another similar approach. It's still canvases, it's something that a user guide, something that you can use to start thinking about your organization and how do you transform it into an entrepreneurial organization. So to answer your question, Haier didn't really use the platform design toolkit, but a company that wanted to become more similar to Haier could use the toolkit to both create the value propositions on the market or to transform itself into a more entrepreneurial ecosystem that is more similar to what Haier is doing on the market. So with Haier, we are mostly working on standardizing and communicating their organizational model that is very similar, very resonant with our platform design toolkit that is much more about business model innovation instead of open organizational innovation. So now with these AAO toolkit, so the Entrepreneurial Ecosystem Enabling Organization Toolkit and the Platform Design Toolkit, you kind of have this full spectrum. You can think about how do you innovate on the market with the Platform Design Toolkit, how do you create a platform-based, marketplace-based value propositions, and on the other hand, you can think about how do I transform my organization into an entrepreneurial organization where many micro enterprises can bring these marketplace and platform propositions to the market on top of their products or services.
So what is the relevance between the platform design itself and the Haier's, the smaller units?
The relevance is that, so imagine that markets, the opportunities to create products and services on the markets are going more in the direction of doing a marketplace instead of doing a product. So instead of, let's say that you want to go into the market of haircuts. Instead of building, tens of shops, hiring professional hairdressers and doing marketing and getting people into the shops, you just create a platform strategy. So you create a software platform, for example, where hairdressers can join and attract customers through this booking system. So everybody knows that to book a haircut, you don't need to go and look on Google or whatever. You can just go on that platform and you can book your preferred haircut, preferred hairdresser. So that's the difference between bringing up a service on the market or creating a platform where existing ecosystems can connect. Okay, so to do this, you can do that with Platform Design Toolkit. So Platform Design Toolkit allows people to design these kind of value propositions. So value propositions and solutions that are much more about how do I create a space and services and softwares that ecosystem players can use to connect with each other, producers and consumers. So this is what the Platform Design Toolkit is all about. But to do this, you cannot do that with a monolithic, gigantic, functional organization. I mean, an organization where, for example, you have 5,000 people working on HR, 3,000 people working on finance, or 10,000 people working on marketing, whatever. You really need an organization that is made of a network of small, like 7, 10 people, very entrepreneurial micro enterprises. And these micro enterprises can go on the market and find an opportunity, and to catch this opportunity, they can design a platform strategy. Okay, so you can imagine Hire as a platform of platforms. So Hire itself, it's a platform, but the entities in Hire ecosystem are the units, the micro enterprises in the whole group. In the whole group, there are now more than 4,000 micro enterprises. And these enterprises are bringing on the market, often, of course, sometimes they bring some traditional products or like washing machines or whatever, but sometimes they also bring platform value propositions, so these kind of marketplaces. So if you look at the whole organizational topic, you could use a Hire model to restructure the way that your organization manages people from functional silos into interdependent and entrepreneurial small teams. And those small teams will be going on the market, and they can use a Platform Design Toolkit to design their own product strategies on the market. I hope it's clear now.
So since our organization is public sector, and then we have 21 member countries, they're all public sectors mostly. Some of them are private sector. How can we use this platform design toolkit to improve the public sector organizations?
I think there is increasingly less difference between private, public. There's a lot that now, for example, is happening in the open sector. So the open sector, what is it? Is it private? Is it public? We don't know. So public and private are really much overlapped. So, for example, think about an organization making a platform to allow citizens to create, for example, new citizen solutions. So let's think about food, for example, and imagine that you build as a public institution a system, software and other things, where people can collect investments, hire agronomists, and design, for example, agroecological installations and generate, create food and basically grow food and distribute food. And so you could have at this point like a kind of cooperative of citizens autonomously running an agroecological project to create food locally. And maybe some of them could also be paid to do that. So it could be maybe an entrepreneurial citizen that does it. So in that case, would that be a private or a public institution? Would it be an open institution? So we really don't know. It would be a public institution doing a strategy to empower private initiatives, citizen-led initiatives. So, this is to say that I expect public and private and open to merge and to mix a lot in the coming years, and especially if you think about what are the new priorities that are emerging in the world. And the pandemic, for example, pushed us a lot to rethink about our supply chains and to rethink about our economic system. And now we see that we have an economic system that is brittle, that is very, it's not very resilient. So, for example, you cannot, in the US, they discovered that they couldn't actually produce a ventilator because all the production, the skills and the materials were all in China. So if China wasn't sending ventilators to the US, they couldn't make it. So somebody, I don't remember the name, mentioned that the next decade is going to be the decade where we actually reinvent a lot of our supply chains, food, energy, healthcare, welfare, many of these things. We're going to rebuild them through a much more local, much more community-owned, much more, I would say, distributed way. So many things that now we consume from more globalized supply chains are going to be most likely reinvented in this more local, more resilient, and more citizen participative way. And so this is a huge opportunity, for example. It's a huge entrepreneurial opportunity. So the question is, a public organization can use these strategies, for example, these platform strategies, to help citizens to actually produce part of the economy. So to create value in the economy. Again, in energy, imagine you do a platform for, to help citizens to co-invest and create microgrids in energy, similar to the discussion we had on the agricultural projects. So there's going to be a lot of these in the coming decades. And furthermore, also policy making can be designed as a platform, because as I said, let's try not to make the mistake to think about platforms as websites, because we're not talking about websites. We are talking about an approach to design. And you can use a platform approach also in the design of policies. So you can design a policy, for example, in a way that creates channels for systems to connect with each other. So, for example, you can, reduce a certain bureaucracy, or you can create certain services to let the ecosystem or self-organize and provide everybody the possibility to increase in their capabilities. So, for example, we have been using platform thinking with the United Nations. We have been using platform design with the United Nations development programs, for example, to address the problem of the job market in India, in Maharashtra, if I'm not wrong. So we were trying to understand how you can design a policy with this platform mindset, a policy for enabling employment in disadvantaged sectors, like female employment or young people employment, so that kind of stuff. So the question is really about how do I embrace the potential and the capabilities in the ecosystem? How do I design channels instead of solutions? How do I design services that sustain a continuous learning in the ecosystem, even if I'm a public sector player? So the difference between the public and the private, it mainly resides in the business model. So, of course, a private institution needs to have a certain business model, while a public one may have a different business model. So maybe the public one doesn't really need money to create and sustain a platform because it gets subsidies through taxes. So it's really about a practice. It's not just it's not about Airbnb. It's about acknowledging the potential in the ecosystem. It's about moving from giving solutions to giving channels, and it's about to move away from thinking that you know what to do, how to serve your citizen, much more about how do you support your citizens to be able to enterprise, to create, to integrate, to interact in the society. So it's not just about the freedom to choose and to vote, and maybe the freedom to choose how to invest the money from the citizens, but it's also about what I call economic freedom. So it's about creating spaces where citizens can have the freedom to enterprise, have the freedom to create systems and services in food, in energy, in welfare, in cooperation, in development, in regeneration. So it's really about creating spaces for them to thrive, and this is what I mean when I think about platform thinking.
So the APO is trying to build an ecosystem for innovation, covering all its member countries. So how could we apply the platform design toolkit philosophy for maximum benefit? I know you've briefly touched upon it already just now.
Right.
But if we can go more specific about the ecosystem building for innovation, how can we tap into your design platform design thinking?
Well, there are many things that you can think about. Let's think about, for example, designing the platform starting from the ecosystem. So the first thing you should do is really understand what the ecosystem is trying to achieve. So sometimes when we speak about innovation, we come up with a very empty word. So what innovation are we talking about? So it's really about trying to understand what are the relationships that are already existing in the markets that we are organizing, in the context we are organizing. So first of all, Platform Design Toolkit philosophy could help the APO to map out what the ecosystem is trying to achieve, what is the value perception, and how you can reorganize the system in a way that is scalable. It can generate this exponential growth. On the second aspect, it could be also about entrepreneurship. So as I said, the APO could also design some kind of incentives so that it opens entrepreneurial spaces for members to create a new value and distribute this new value created to the rest of the players. But it's largely about understanding how you can support them in what they're trying to achieve already, how you can support them in becoming better at what they do, how you can create services that essentially generate these scalable learning possibilities, these possibilities to be better inside the APO ecosystem instead of staying outside. So at the end of the day, you need to have members that come up and say, okay, I need to be there because there I can be the best version of myself. So you really need to understand what they are looking for, what kind of niche interactions. So for example, innovation is something that really happens in niches. It really happens outside the organization. So how do you capture this innovation? How do you make it possible for these relationships to happen in a very specific niche where the innovation can be created? So it's really about, again, understanding what they're doing, creating the right channels, creating the right support services for their evolution, and make it entrepreneurial at the end of the day.
When we think about the platform design, actually, when we talk about the innovation, it's more about, because in many cases, you have a very good ideas for, let's say, the innovative ideas, and also you are just about to start your own business. Let's say that you really innovate in disruptive innovation you're going to bring into the new business sector. But then what happens all the time in our member countries is that because of the regulations, they suffer a lot. Many innovative ideas, when they start business, but once after they start business, still they suffer, and then they shut down their business because of regulations. It's more about how we are going to make sure that the regulations, all those bureaucratic practices and the corruption cannot disturb or cannot interrupt the innovative ideas and innovative minds.
So there are two topics. Of course, this is a huge topic. It's a huge issue. It's we are actually living through a systemic transition, and this systemic transition is about my big friend and advisor and co-founder of Boundaryless, Lisa Gerinsky, says that we are living through this chasm between the no more and the not yet. So the no more, she said this very interesting thing. The no more is trying to keep everything together by velcroing it and try to to keep it there and to resist this change. And on the other hand, you have the not yet, which is trying to emerge. And it's clear, it's normal that these new ways are clashing with the old ways. So the old world, the no more, will resist, of course. Okay, so this is something that we cannot avoid. But Platform Design Toolkit can help you to, for example, identify what are the stakeholders that you need to address if you want to bring something to the market. So if you want to bring a platform strategy to the market and you can anticipate what stakeholders, including regulators, will be impacted from your work, then you will need to get them into the process very, very, very early. So these kind of regulators could be involved in the actual design process so that you can design incentives also for them. And you cannot design a platform that just creates externalities on the stakeholders so that they will resist the deployment of this strategy. So this is one way. So one way is address the negative externalities that you are bringing to some of the stakeholders early enough so that you can anticipate, you can talk with them, you can get them involved in the process. So this is one thing. And another thing is you can use often these platform strategies to address parts of the market which may not be based may not be, I would say, constrained by regulations. Let me make a clear example. For example, if you talk about psychological support, maybe you can make a platform for normally people go to the psychologists or to the clinical psychologists, to the people that are actually regulated and certified and so on. But you can also get some psychological coaching from a known professional psychologist, maybe from a coach or from even another person that can share some life lessons with you. So in this way, platform strategies can help you to address the same need, but with a non-regulated solution. So this is increasingly a pattern that can be used to unlock supply potential that is not regulated, but can help you achieve the same results.
It boils down to putting a great idea into practice. So because I can see that your platform design toolkit can resolve many issues, but still, what if the bureaucrats or corporate managers won't even consider adopting platform design thinking in the first place?
Well, that's a delicate question. So first of all, one thing I can share with any of you listening is let's not create alibis. So let's not say we are not innovating because our bosses don't understand and then don't give us the power and so on. So sometimes you can create something new and powerful with a very frugal approach. And then once you demonstrate this traction between what you are trying to do and the ecosystem, and remember that you can study the ecosystem first and then create your value proposition with our tools, then you can maybe demonstrate that there is a lot of action, a lot of traction. So you can even make just a landing page and capture 1,000 emails in 1 week and say, okay, you guys, you should see that there is attraction for that. There is people are resonating with these ideas, and normally these approaches, these lean approaches, give you a lot of credibility towards dinosaurs that don't really know what's happening in the world. And then, of course, if your organization is just made of bureaucrats, you may want to consider, basically dropping out and just finding a new place where you can innovate. And again, remember that this is the age of the small. It's the age of the passion economy. It's the age of pull. So don't let a bureaucratic organization stop you from exploring, stops you from capturing the value in the ecosystem and bringing these new value propositions to so that you can empower ecosystems. If you're really passionate about platforms and platform thinking, don't be discouraged by staying inside an organization that doesn't recognize these changes. Consider dropping out. And when you consider dropping out, you can do like Simon Sinek said once, you can change careers like Tarzan. You can just leave one rope when the other rope is available. And so, you don't just need to jump into the void. You can explore something new while you are doing your own job and in your free time, for example. And then once you have something that has structure, you can move on. So really, escape bureaucracies. That's my message.
Because what you just said to me, it just got me thinking that, do you have any case that you work with any public organizations or any public projects? You just mentioned UN before, so.
Right.
So because if you talk about private sector only, actually, I'm sure that you have many, many cases. But I just wonder whether you have any experience with the public sectors.
Right. There is a beautiful project that we loved working with. It's a project from the National Healthcare System in the UK. And we helped hospice to basically design a platform to help end-of-life critically ill patients to connect. It's a platform called MyPulse. Connect with volunteers or basically helping the caregivers, to connect with volunteers and service providers to make it easier for the end-of-life care patients to receive, for example, have the possibility to be driven somewhere or receive a haircut or something like that. So it's really about a platform that connects volunteers and service providers with caregivers that have this duty of looking after end-of-life or critically ill patients, normally elderly people. So that was a very beautiful project. It's a project existing in this space that we call the social care, which is a way to provide very personalized care beyond the protocols and the standards of a public care system. It's really about creating this cloud of relationships around patients and caregivers. So that was a great project. It's called MyPulse, and you can look it up. I think the website is mypulse.co.uk.
Would you like to make any closing comments?
So I'm really thankful for the opportunity to this conversation, and I encourage people from Asia to connect. We really have lots of fans. I'm looking forward to have more Asian contributors and partners. So reach out, let's have a chat, and let's imagine something together.
So thank you so much for your precious time. And I really appreciate that you sharing your great insight on platform design toolkit. And I'm sure that it will benefit our viewers a lot. Viewers, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that you can subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss out on a lot. So again, Simon, thank you so much. And I really hope that we can see you in Asia more often.
Right, that would be great. Thank you very much and enjoy.
Okay, thank you so much.